The cosmos, as any self-respecting spacefaring species will tell you, is mostly empty. Mostly. Sprinkled throughout that vast emptiness are pockets of, well, less emptiness. And within one of those less empty pockets, a war raged. Not a war of passion or ideology, mind you. This was a war of logistics and calculated expansion, waged between the Quirm and the Zydonians. The Quirm were, imagine highly militaristic dolphins obsessed with bureaucracy, and you're halfway there, and aquatic species, they valued order, chain of command, and the proper application of sonar-based weaponry. Their battle cries sounded suspiciously like elaborate tax audits, and their strategic retreats were meticulously planned according to tide tables and kelp forest density. They were, to put it mildly, not a barrel of laughs. Their opponents, the Zydonians, were even less amusing. A hive-mind species operating through a vast network of interconnected data nodes, think organic server farms with tentacles. They approached warfare with the cold, calculating efficiency of an algorithm. Humor, emotion, individuality, all were considered inefficient processing errors to be purged from the system. Their battle strategies were essentially flowcharts, and their diplomacy consisted of sending increasingly passive-aggressive legal notices across interstellar channels. And then there was Dave. Dave was, undeniably, human. He was also, at that particular moment, deeply regretting his decision to answer that distress beacon while on vacation. It had seemed like a good idea at the time. Explore strange new worlds, the brochure had promised. It hadn't mentioned anything about being press-ganged into an intergalactic conflict. One moment, Dave was sipping a suspiciously blue cocktail on a beach of surprisingly orange sand. The next, he was being scrutinized by a panel of stern-faced, or stern-gill-faced in the Quirm's case, military officers. They spoke in rapid bursts of clicks, whistles, and translated legalese, none of which Dave fully understood. "So, let me get this straight," Dave said, scratching his beard. "You're at war with the Zydonians and you want me to help?" The lead Quirm, a particularly grumpy-looking specimen named Admiral Krill, or at least that's what the translation matrix approximated, puffed out his gills importantly. "Your species," he stated with an air of scientific detachment, "possesses unique characteristics. We believe your unpredictability may be an asset in disrupting Zydonian strategic algorithms." Dave blinked. "Unpredictability? You mean like the fact that I haven't done laundry in 3 weeks, or that I sometimes put ketchup on my scrambled eggs?" Krill's gills twitched, a sign of extreme Quirmish displeasure. "Your illogical behavior patterns, your irrational decision-making processes, these are qualities that could potentially introduce chaos into the Zydonian collective." Dave grinned. "Chaos, huh? Well, I've always been pretty good at causing a little chaos." He paused, then added, "Does this come with dental?" The initial phase of Dave's integration into the Quirm military was, to put it mildly, a disaster. The Quirm operated on a strict schedule of formalized greetings, synchronized swimming drills, and mandatory seaweed appreciation seminars. Dave, on the other hand, seemed to operate on a schedule dictated by the vague whims of his digestive system and a deep-seated aversion to anything resembling synchronized activity. His first uniform fitting was a prime example. The Quirm, accustomed to perfectly streamlined bioluminescent body sheaths, were horrified when Dave insisted on altering his to include pockets. "Where am I supposed to keep my snacks?" he'd asked, completely oblivious to the horrified gasps that rippled through the tailoring department. Communication was another hurdle. The Quirm language, a complex series of clicks, whistles, and bioluminescent flashes, was designed for precise, unambiguous communication. Dave's attempts to master it resulted in a series of unintentionally offensive pronouncements, including a memorable incident where he accidentally insulted the Admiral's mother by imitating a mating call of a particularly unattractive species of deep-sea slug. That military protocol proved equally challenging. During a simulated battle exercise, Dave, instead of following the designated attack pattern, decided to improvise by launching a volley of glowsticks while shouting pirate slogans. The Quirm officers were not amused. Admiral Krill nearly choked on his algae paste. Key figures among the Quirm began to form opinions about their new recruit. Lieutenant Shimmer, a rising star known for her flawless tactical simulations, saw Dave as an irritating variable, a glitch in the otherwise perfect Quirm war machine. She meticulously documented his every infraction, convinced he was a Zydonian spy sent to undermine their efforts through sheer incompetence. Sergeant Blubber, a grizzled veteran of numerous kelp forest skirmishes, initially viewed Dave with suspicion, but slowly developed a grudging respect for his unique approach. He appreciated Dave's complete lack of fear and his uncanny ability to find loopholes in even the most rigid regulations. He even started incorporating some of Dave's slang into his battle cries, much to the consternation of his superiors. But the most significant reaction came from Krill himself. The Admiral was perpetually torn between outrage and morbid fascination. Dave was an affront to everything the Quirm held sacred, a walking, talking embodiment of chaos. Yet Krill couldn't deny that Dave's bizarre antics were distracting the Zydonians. Reports were coming in of the enemy's data nodes experiencing processing errors after witnessing some of Dave's behaviors. Perhaps, Krill thought with a shiver, there was a method to this madness. Dave's initial performance in actual combat scenarios only deepened the Quirm's bewilderment. During one engagement with a Zydonian patrol, Dave, instead of employing the standard torpedo barrage, simply started waving his arms and making strange noises. To everyone's surprise, the Zydonians paused, their optical sensors seemingly locked onto Dave's erratic movements. They appeared confused, allowing the Quirm squadron to gain a tactical advantage. After the skirmish, Admiral Krill demanded an explanation. What was that maneuver, Recruit Dave?" he asked, his bioluminescent patterns flashing in agitation. Dave shrugged. "I don't know, Admiral. Just kind of flapped my arms. Figured they'd never seen anything like it." Lieutenant Shimmer, ever the pragmatist, ran simulations to analyze the event. The results were inconclusive. According to her calculations, Dave's actions should have had no impact whatsoever. The Zydonians should have easily neutralized the threat. Yet they hadn't. Other incidents followed. Dave consistently disregarded established protocols, opting instead for bizarre, seemingly random actions. He once used a deflector shield as a makeshift barbecue grill, managing to cook a surprisingly palatable kelp burger. Another time, he accidentally rerouted the ship's communication system to broadcast Earth music, which strangely seemed to disrupt the Zydonian jamming signals. Sergeant Blubber, initially amused, started to suspect something more was at play. He noticed Dave's eyes during combat. They weren't filled with fear or adrenaline, but with a strange sort of detached curiosity. It was as if Dave wasn't fighting the war, but observing it, experimenting with it, as if the entire conflict was one big, bizarre science project. The Quirm began to whisper. Some suggested Dave possessed some sort of unknown psychic ability, capable of influencing the Zydonians' minds. Others believed he was simply insane, and his unpredictable behavior was a form of accidental genius. A few even wondered if he was, in fact, an advanced Zydonian sleeper agent, programmed to sow chaos and confusion. The one thing they all agreed on was that Dave was different, unpredictably, dangerously different. Admiral Krill, his patience wearing thinner than a Zydonian data packet, finally convened a high-level meeting. "We must understand Recruit Dave," he declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "His actions defy all logic, all probability. Is he a weapon? A fool? Or something far more sinister?" Lieutenant Shimmer was tasked with compiling a comprehensive report on human culture, hoping to find some explanation for Dave's baffling behavior. She delved into the archives, sifting through terabytes of data on Earth history, sociology, and entertainment? What were sitcoms and reality television? The more she learned, the more perplexed she became. "Admiral," she reported, her voice laced with confusion, "human culture is chaotic. They appear to value illogical concepts such as humor, irony, and sarcasm. Their history is filled with senseless conflicts, bizarre rituals, and a seemingly endless obsession with sugary beverages. Sergeant Blubber, never one for subtlety, offered his own assessment. "Sir, with all due respect, I think the human is just messing with us. He's probably laughing his head off watching us try to make sense of his nonsense." The Admiral considered this, his brow furrowed. But to what end, Sergeant? What could he possibly gain from such frivolous behavior? As the Quirm delved deeper, they uncovered even more unsettling information. They learned about social media, where humans voluntarily shared their most private thoughts and activities with complete strangers. They discovered cat videos, which seemed to hold an inexplicable power over the human psyche. They even stumbled upon ancient texts describing office pranks and practical jokes, elaborate schemes designed solely to cause amusement and mild annoyance. The Quirm were baffled. They were a species driven by logic, order, and unwavering adherence to protocol. The concept of deliberately causing confusion or disrupting the established order, purely for entertainment value, was utterly alien to them. The more they learned, the more Dave's actions seemed not just random but purposeful. Was he deliberately subverting their authority? Was he trying to undermine their war effort? Or was he simply bored? The Quirm leaders grew increasingly uneasy. They couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial, that Dave was operating on a level they simply couldn't comprehend. The human's true nature and intentions remained shrouded in mystery, a source of growing paranoia within the heart of the Quirm Command. The day arrived when the Quirm were ready to unveil their ultimate weapon, Project Leviathan. It was housed in a massive obsidian chamber deep beneath their command center. The air crackled with barely contained energy. Admiral Krill, with Dave in tow, stood before a shimmering hexagonal portal. "Recruit Dave," Krill announced, his voice echoing with gravitas. "Behold, the culmination of centuries of Quirm ingenuity, the device that will shatter the Zydonian hive mind and secure our victory." The portal shimmered, then vanished, revealing a brightly colored, slightly dented vending machine. It was undeniably a relic of human ingenuity. Scratched images of sugary drinks adorned its front. A coin slot sat above a series of dusty selection buttons. Dave stared at it, a slow grin spreading across his face. "Huh," he said, tilting his head. "A vintage Fizz-o-Matic 5000. I haven't seen one of these since Earth got blown up." Admiral Krill's gills pulsed with a mixture of anticipation and pride. "This Fizz-o-Matic, as you call it, is far more than it appears. It is a weapon of unimaginable psychic force, capable of inducing existential dread in even the most hardened Zydonian warrior." Dave chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Existential dread? Nah, Admiral. This thing dispenses high-fructose corn syrup and artificial flavors. The worst it'll give you is a sugar rush and a mild case of regret." The Quirm officers exchanged uneasy glances. Sergeant Blubber sputtered, But the energy readings, the dimensional distortions, we've been calibrating it for cycles." Dave shrugged. "Yeah, well, the energy readings are probably from the faulty wiring. And the dimensional distortions? Probably just the cheap holographic display trying to make the generic cola look appealing." He sauntered over to the machine, examining it with a critical eye. "Needs a good cleaning, though, and I bet half the flavors are just the same syrup with different food coloring." Krill, his voice cracking with disbelief, insisted, "Recruit Dave, you are mistaken. Our scientists have proven that this device emits a concentrated wave of consumerism. It will overload the Zydonian collective with desires they cannot fulfill, shattering their unity." Dave sighed dramatically. "Admiral, with all due respect, you've been had. This isn't a weapon of mass anything unless you count mass obesity. It's a soda machine. You put in money, you get a sugary drink. End of story." He paused, then added, "Although I wouldn't mind seeing if it still works. I'm parched." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a crumpled Earth credit, and tried to insert it into the coin slot. It promptly got stuck. Chaos erupted. Admiral Krill, his usually stoic face contorted in horror, bellowed, "No. Don't. Activate it. You'll unleash, sugary refreshment upon the battlefield. But it was too late. Dave, with a grunt of effort, dislodged the credit, causing the machine to whir to life with a series of grinding noises and flashing lights. A lukewarm, vaguely orange liquid sputtered into the dispensing cup. Dave took a tentative sip. Yep, he confirmed. Still tastes like regret. The effects on the battlefield were unexpected. The Quirm, expecting a wave of existential dread, instead witnessed their Zydonian enemies stop fighting. The usually relentless drones paused, their multifaceted eyes widening with curiosity as the faint scent of artificial orange drifted through the void of space. One brave, or perhaps foolish, Zydonian drone extended a pseudopod towards the Quirm lines. Identify, it buzzed, its voice a monotonous drone. That aroma, is it pleasurable? A Quirm soldier, equally bewildered, stammered, It's a Fizz-o-Matic byproduct, a weapon of questionable tactical value. The Zydonian drone paused, its internal processors whirring. Tactical value irrelevant, it declared. Sensation novel. Request permission to sample. Before the Quirm could react, the Zydonian had crossed the no man's land and was eagerly slurping the remaining orange liquid from Dave's cup. Its buzzing intensified, shifting from a monotonous drone to a slightly more enthusiastic hum. Fascinating, it announced. The concentrated sucrose, the artificial citrus notes, a truly unique sensory experience. Soon, the battlefield transformed from a war zone into an impromptu soda-tasting event. Zydonian drones and Quirm soldiers, alike lined up, eagerly awaiting their turn at the Fizz-o-Matic. Dave, now hailed as some kind of accidental genius, was besieged with requests for different flavors and, somewhat disturbingly, autographs. Admiral Krill watched in stunned silence as his meticulously planned war strategy dissolved into a sugary, slightly sticky mess. Sergeant Blubber, ever the pragmatist, was already negotiating a trade agreement with the Zydonians for Fizz-o-Matic maintenance parts. On the Zydonian side, the collective hive mind was in utter disarray. The sudden influx of individual sensory input was causing widespread glitches and existential crises. One faction argued for the immediate cessation of hostilities in favor of securing a steady supply of Fizz-o-Matic products. Another faction advocated for reverse engineering the machine to create their own, even more intensely flavored beverages. The war, it seemed, was over. Not with a bang, but with a fizz. And a whole lot of high-fructose corn syrup. The immediate aftermath resembled less a military occupation and more a particularly bizarre corporate retreat. Quirm and Zydonian, representatives fueled by vast quantities of Fizz-o-Matic, engaged in tense but ultimately productive negotiations. The terms of the truce were unprecedented. Joint ownership of all Fizz-o-Matic technology, mandatory flavor-sharing agreements, and a complete ban on the use of artificial sweeteners in future conflicts. The long-term impact on Quirm culture was profound. The rigid military structure, once the bedrock of their society, began to show cracks. Soldiers started questioning the necessity of complex battle strategies when a simple sugar rush could achieve the same result. Admiral Krill, stripped of his command but strangely content, opened a Fizz-o-Matic-themed amusement park, featuring the Dave the Destroyer roller coaster and the Orange Apocalypse water slide. The Zydonians, too, underwent a transformation. The hive mind, once a bastion of collective thought, fragmented into smaller, more individualistic subgroups, each obsessed with a particular Fizz-o-Matic flavor. Some even started experimenting with artistic expression, creating sculptures out of discarded soda cans and composing symphonies inspired by the gurgling sounds of the machine. As for Dave, he became an intergalactic celebrity, a symbol of human ingenuity or perhaps just dumb luck. He was offered lucrative endorsement deals, honorary degrees, and even a planet of his own. But Dave, true to form, declined them all. He just wanted to go home and watch some TV. One day, a Quirm delegation arrived on Earth bearing a gift, a fully functional chrome-plated Fizz-o-Matic, capable of dispensing an infinite variety of flavors. They presented it to Dave with a solemn ceremony, declaring him a hero and a visionary. Dave, slightly hungover, scratched his head and said, "Thanks, guys, but that's just a soda machine, right?" The Quirm looked at each other, their faces a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. But you used it to end a war," one of them exclaimed. Dave shrugged. "Yeah, well, desperate times, desperate measures. Besides," he added with a grin, "who can say no to a free soda?"